Yeah, hi Kay. Whether Rishi Sunak is coming or not, Joe Biden is certainly here this morning. He's arrived in Tel Aviv for talks with Benjamin Netanyahu, just as Israel is saying that it's not responsible for the explosion at a hospital in Gaza, which Hamas officials say killed 500 people. Let's speak now then to the Israeli government spokesman, Eylon Levy. Good morning. Thank you for being with us. So just to be clear, are you, good morning. Are you saying, is your stance that Israel did not do this, 100% Israel did not do this?
Thank you. I think it's time to put this issue to rest. The mounting evidence, which is incontrovertible really by this point, is that what happened last night is that Palestinian Islamic Jihad launched a rocket from inside the Gaza Strip, that it misfired. It fell short inside the Gaza Strip and hit the parking lot of that hospital. Now, the evidence is there for everyone to see. This isn't a case of we're not 100% sure, he said, she said. The evidence from the IDF, declassified evidence, independent evidence, is there for everyone to see and examine the evidence. For one, Al Jazeera broadcast the whole thing live at 6:59. You can see on the Al Jazeera footage a rocket exploding from a volley and crashing, and then the fire at the hospital. There is also security cam footage from Netiva Asara, one of the villages destroyed by the Hamas death squads in the 7th of October massacre, again showing a volley of rockets, one falling short and an explosion. And the IDF has even declassified intelligence with a video recording, with a voice recording of a phone call between Hamas operatives saying this was Palestinian Islamic Jihad firing a rocket from a cemetery behind a hospital. So we can put this issue to rest. What happened yesterday was a war crime. It was a war crime by Islamic Jihad trying to commit an atrocity against Israeli civilians, but ended up killing Palestinian civilians. We don't know how many people were killed. Let's treat with a healthy dose of skepticism. Everything coming from the Hamas Health Ministry.
I wonder, Eylon. Yeah, and on that, Eylon, I just wonder, because it's an interesting point. There were questions this morning about whether an Islamic Jihad rocket could have caused that much damage, or more specifically, that many deaths. Is Israel, are you disputing as well the number of deaths that are being claimed by Hamas?
First of all, absolutely, we're disputing everything that Hamas claims. Let's remember, we're 12 days since the October 12th massacre. Israel is still trying to identify and count the dead. And it was extremely suspect that Hamas, within minutes, immediately threw out outrageous numbers. There is simply no way that it could possibly have those numbers so soon. The Gaza Health Ministry is Hamas. Hamas is ISIS. It's the terror organization that perpetrated the October 7th massacre. That's not difficult. Absolutely, we dispute those numbers. We would expect the international media as well to independently verify things before reporting them. We know that Hamas has an interest in waging a war of misinformation against Israel in order to generate the very same international sympathy that we're seeing that then supports its claims to get Israel to lay off the airstrikes, so that we are taking in defensive action in order to destroy the terror organization that was behind that horrific October 7th massacre. Now, as for why it caused such a big explosion, first, let's get the evidence about how big the explosion was. But let's remember, one, if it was a rocket that misfired, it means its fuel wasn't used on the trajectory itself, and that fuel would have exploded in the explosion. And secondly, we know that Hamas often keeps ammunition underneath schools, underneath hospitals, and that, I assume, is one scenario that the army and the media should also be investigating, whether it hit a secondary depot. But certainly, a rocket that misfired and all that fuel from a long-range rocket falling short inside the Gaza Strip would definitely explain the fireball that we saw in that footage.
Yeah, just to be clear on the point about Hamas claims, I was on air actually last night, and we did say that these were claims by Hamas, that we couldn't independently confirm them at that time because, well, for one thing, we don't have our own journalists in Gaza, but also that we were awaiting the Israeli version on this. So we do qualify these things. Now, I just think an important thing more broadly is that the Israelis constantly say that they are not targeting civilians, but it is claimed, and I say claimed, that 3,000 have been killed in the last 10 days. So I just wonder why people should believe you when you say you're not targeting, when you get numbers like that, so many numbers, and the images from the hospitals that we're seeing. Just a broader point, that one.
You're right. The images we're seeing coming from inside the Gaza Strip are very unpleasant to watch. And that is the reality of war. It's the reality of a war in which a terror organization in the vein of ISIS has embedded itself so deeply within populated civilian areas, within schools, within hospitals, underneath people's homes. That is Hamas's modus operandi, to embed itself and use its civilians as human shields. And that is exactly why Israel is urging the residents of northern Gaza to vacate south temporarily for their own safety. In doing that, we're fully complying with our obligations under international humanitarian law to give a warning wherever possible. I think we've already forfeited the element of surprise in order to allow as many civilians as possible to get out of harm's way. We don't want to see any more civilians being hurt. We don't want to see any more casualties. That's why we're asking them to evacuate for their own safety.
Just one last point. If you were not bombing Gaza, then people, I suppose, would not be taking sanctuary in the car park of a hospital.
That is a very fair point. And if Hamas had not invaded on the morning of the 7th of October, if it hadn't butchered 1,400 people, maimed 4,000, taken 200 hostages into Israel in the worst terror attack in world history since 9/11, we would not be in this war. This isn't a war that we wanted. It's not a war that we started. It's not a war that we expected. It is a war that Hamas has dragged us into with the war crime of the October 7th massacre. And it is a war that we are determined to win because we have no choice and we can no longer exist with this ISIS-style terror organization on our borders. We're going to win, and we're going to win decisively.
OK, Eylon, Levy, appreciate your time this morning. And it is a morning when Joe Biden